All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to send an email throughout the show, you could do so at MessiahHour@gmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. Everyone wants to know more about Islam nowadays, especially with the potential deal which could cause Iran to have nuclear weapons. On the line to discuss Islam in general is from Somalzal.com and GerGer.com, the co-author of the hit book World of the Ger, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hey, Ari, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure as always.
Indeed. Now, a lot of people focus on Iran, especially currently, but I want to focus on some countries that have a lot of ties to Islam, which people focus less attention on. That would be Saudi Arabia and Yemen. So tell us a bit about that.
So in the news, there's, the Middle East, it's like a fireball. New things pop up all the time. So as you mentioned, everyone's talking about Iran and the bomb, right? We know that. And just Islam in general. And everybody knows about Saudi Arabia and, the oil and all the shady deals going on with that, with the Rothschilds or, all these secret groups and oil deals, the Bushes. But what catches attention is, for example, when the Arab Spring started, no one really saw it coming. No one really understood what it was about, the internal affairs here. And so the newest twist to the ongoing Arab Spring, which has already been almost 5 years, I guess, pretty long. One of the newest twists in the saga, kind of going away from the whole Syria thing, which Syria is where Arab Spring, I think, has settled ever since Syria became the battleground. Right, the main focus of the fighting as a concentration in the Middle East was the Syria playground. And so what I'm saying is now Saudi Arabia, with the onset of ISIS, which also has been a big news topic, and they're taking over of large parts of Iraq. But it wasn't really so much for the Arab Spring issue, more of a fallout from the America pullout of Iraq. So again, to close this point, Saudi Arabia is now going to war with Yemen. And so that's, why do I liken that to the Arab Spring? Because it's really not an American issue. It's really not the general newsworthy issue. But it's more of a flare-up of the Middle East proper, right? And kind of like a crosswind from the ongoing Arab Spring. And the issue is always tied to Iran, but in a different sense than we're used to. Iran is your world leader in Shiite Islam. And most of the Middle East is Sunni. And that's not to say all, but a large part is Sunni. And it's different schools of thought of essential Islam. So imagine if Breslovers and Chabadniks were to duke it out to the point of chopping off heads over which Rebbe is the Tzaddik Emes, right? That's how far they take it. Now, ironically, Jews don't take it that far, which is kind of interesting, because we all know Jews are very passionate about their Judaism, yet really we don't get physical over our Jewish beliefs, right? We don't crusade the Reformed Jews. We're pretty easygoing when it comes to our differences. We might say you're condemned with the eternal hell and have no soul, not in a good way, obviously, but let's say some people might resort to that, and that might even be more dangerous than physical violence, actually. But at the end of the day, we're pretty civil people when it comes to our disputes. Whereas the Arab world, Sunni Shia, is a civil war that literally is to the death. And the irony is that as much as they hate Israel, they hate each other more than they hate us. And I wish that was just kind of lip service. But it is true. The amount of blood that we've seen spilled from Islam to Islam is far greater than any blood spilled in Israel. And we owe a big thank you to Akash Baruch Hu for that. That is part of our salvation here in the land. Not to say that God won't rescue us or that we can't stand for ourselves, but it's a big help when the reason why they cannot unite to wipe us off the map in physical, natural terms is because they're too busy wiping each other off the map to be the essential, quintessential Islam. So Iran is promoting a Shia Islam into Yemen, which is on the border of Saudi Arabia. And they basically want to overthrow the government and produce Shiite proxy settlements all over the Middle East. And as we all know, the Syria playground is established by Iran, which is what Israel's whole complaint is that Iran is spreading terror throughout the region and throughout the world. And what's interesting here is even if you want to say that it's not really Iran, creating all of this tension, that it's not them, it's other causes. We can see by Saudi Arabia, who is very close to putting ground troops into Yemen, and they are diametrically opposed, right? Even though Saudi Arabia has its own blend of Islam, it's not proper Sunni Shia. They call it the Wahhabis, whatever they're called, right? So the idea is that Saudi Arabia is threatened by Shia. So therefore, Iran is not the only problem with Israel. Is that Saudi Arabia also has its own separate, unique problem. And therefore, when Saudi Arabia is fighting Iran, even through proxy, you get such drastic results that you have ISIS actually fighting alongside Saudi Arabia, while ISIS wants to destroy Saudi Arabian Islam. So even if you are diametrically opposed in fighting either side by side or one against another, it really becomes the same cholent. Right? As long as Iran is pushing this, it doesn't really matter who is the focal point of the entire conflict. The conflict spreads like fire, and it makes it not safe for anybody. And it looks like the heart of the conflict is being pushed on the Iranian-Iraqi border. And those wars, which brought out Saddam Hussein, and then instituted ISIS, and then Iran's going long-arm through Syria, whatever this fireball is, in Iran as a main catalyst of that fire, that's what's being spread throughout the region. And again, to finish this point, the most recent developments of the war in the Middle East, or Arab Spring, or what Torah would call the exile of Ishmael, is Saudi Arabia has had enough with Iran, which is ironic that the President of the United States, who has many oil interests in the Middle East, as the American cause has, would still seek a deal with Iran. So whatever's going on under the surface, it's so great that Saudi Arabia is willing to go against Iran and even bring Israel in as a potential partner.
Now, one of the things I want to go to is ISIS, because it's very confusing exactly who they are and what they're doing and why, because they came out of nowhere. I mean, even, I'd say 7 months ago, most people on planet Earth didn't know who they were. So tell us a little bit more about ISIS and how they play into this whole global scheme.
So ISIS has been kind of, like you said, an enigma for a lot of people. All we know is that there's a lot of blood spilling, various videos on the internet. We can watch heads being chopped off, guys wearing Nikes and medieval outfits like some kind of a show in Orlando, Florida. Toyota trucks being driven. I mean, it's very odd. It's like this. It's like a clash of bad modernism and some kind of medieval cult. I mean, it's very strange. Then you got Jihadi John, British accent, apologizing to his parents, and threatening Obama. It's all odd. And the graphics and the videos are like Hollywood caliber. Some say it's CGI. What do you call it? CGI? Is that what it's called?
I believe CGI, yes.
Yeah. And so it's a weird thing. I mean, if I wasn't involved in Torah, I really don't know what I would think. I'm surprised the people that are not, embedded in religious study. I don't know how you guys are staying sane, because growing up in 1995, we certainly didn't see this on TV. Let me put it that way. So, what ISIS is, and I just read an amazing article on the internet this week, which really gave perspective to this entire discussion, especially in light of Saudi Arabia ready to put ground troops into Yemen. ISIS is this. When America pulled out of Iraq and it left a vacuum of terrorism and guerrilla warfare, which we all know, right? Americans were being blown up by roadside bombers, etc. And the CIA was in there trying to set up, an infrastructure of Iraq. And it really was a failure. I mean, I don't know there's things going on we don't know, because that failure shouldn't have happened by the terms of logic. So, America really hasn't won a war since World War II. And there's a reason for that. Just like, Israel hasn't really been involved in anything in its history, which is also a weird thing, because we're more than capable of getting rid of Hamas and all these things. So the fact that we're handcuffed is an issue. But what you have is the vacuum in Iraq gave the presence of ISIS. And as you said, that 7 months ago we didn't know who ISIS was. But what ISIS is it's a caliph, the caliphate. Pardon me if I'm pronouncing these things wrong. Caliphate. And what the caliphate does is it allows an authentic Sharia law Islam to manifest itself. And what that means is their whole focus, which allows this to happen, is the conquering of territory. As we all know, that Islam that is successful is when the planet Earth is all Islam. It is predicated on the land of planet Earth. Now that they have a substantial amount of ground, large parts of the former Iraq and all surrounding territories, and they've established the caliphate, kind of like a head of state, who imposes the theology of Islam, then and only then are they allowed to establish the full force of Sharia law, such that even Saudi Arabia, one of the few Sharia law states in the world, is not able to go fully Sharia law because there's no caliphate. So once you go authentic Islam, then you're a heretic if you're not practicing authentic early Islam. That's the school of thought. And therefore, one of the doctrines, let's say, is if you're a, what do you call it, kafir, I think they call it, a heretic, and you say that Islam is outdated, and we have to become modern, then I have a commandment to mock you and embarrass you and degrade you. And that's what you're seeing on the internet and on television. Is ISIS is performing what their blend will have it as the authentic Islam of Muhammad, the early days, brought about by conquest of land headed by the caliphate. So that's one of the backdrops of, even going side by side with Saudi Arabian Islam that holds claim to the holy sites of Islam. And they have a blend of Sharia law, and they are fighting against the Shias. So it's a very complex fabric, and you see, just like the Pope isn't lending any hand to executed Christians, the Muslims, not only are they not lending a hand, They're looking forward to losing all self-control and all kind of basic wisdom. Don't kill, don't do this and that. And it's the opposite. Now it's an excuse in eagerness to kill for the name of the prophet and the name of Islam.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Our guest this afternoon is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the hit book World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, let's talk a bit about the conflict Sunni versus Shiite, and then Islam versus Israel.
So the whole nature is very strange. ISIS is Sunni. Iran is Shia. And again, I don't know all the subtle distinctions because there's a lot of denomination subtle distinctions. But let's just keep it as Sunni Shia in the general for the sake of discussion. So you have Sunni versus Shia is a bloodbath war, literally to the death. And then you have another scenario of the greater Islam versus Israel. And these two wars are going on basically since, in the heated era, since the creation of Israel as a state, which became the Six-Day War basis. The Arab states largely united to destroy Israel, and Israel wiped out the armies and military capacity of several Islamic states. Since then, the Yom Kippur War was another effort, and we won. And since then, Israel has had the iron fist, and they've not been able to push us to the sea. And a large part of that is their own war, Sunni versus Shia. And again, to express the point, in light of our time, Iran is your major world pusher of Shiite Islam. And they are right now at full war with the Sunnis. And Saudi Arabia is really spearheading that war. So again, to kind of rehash this point, it's very odd that Obama would be seeking a deal with Iran, enabling them nuclear power and a potential bomb, when A, they're already at war, B, they have sworn to Israel's demise, C, they've already claimed they want America to collapse and be executed, and the rest of the alphabet continues. The fact that Saudi Arabia, America's friend in oil and in commerce, is seeking to destroy the Shiite entity called Iran, even alongside a partnership with Israel, is something to take into serious consideration of what's going on in America. And at the same time, you have Hezbollah, another long-arm proxy of Iran. And they're trying to tell their Arab brothers and sisters, stop fighting, and we should be focusing on Israel. And you see that the fact that no one is even listening to Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, it shows you how serious the Sunni Shia issue is. And what it comes down to is, what is the real Islam? That's what they're fighting about. And if you are not truly Islamic, you are a heretic. And if you're a heretic, you need to be killed. And so some of the core functions of this agreement is, what is the nature of the end of days? So the Shias believe they know who or what the Redeemer of Islam is, i.e. the Mahdi. And the Sunnis have a different view of what is the Mahdi. The Shias believe that he is I forget the word, I think he was a boy and he died, and he's been in hiding. There's a word for that, I forget the word. But he's been in hiding, and he'll soon be revealed as the leader, the Mahdi. And so the entire regime in Iran has built an empire based on that. And that by leading to an end of days scenario, they will bring the redemption, as Islam knows it. And so Sunni argues and says that's not how it is. Now, to bring ISIS in, that is their core goal. is that by leading true Islam, as they see it, they will bring the world to its conclusion of an end of days and the Mahdi. So in the end, you have a bunch of sects of Islam fighting and quarreling in the pursuit of true Islam. And what it does to each one of them, it feeds into the concept of we are the true Islam and we are going to bring the end of days. And what that has done is made a serious nuclear fireball right in the Middle East in Israel's neighborhood.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. You can email us throughout the show at MessiahHour@gmail.com, or you can email the station IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. And our guest this afternoon is Rabbi David Katz, the co-author of the hit book World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, let's talk about Saudi Arabia again. I understand they've given airspace to Israel to bomb Iran. So tell us a bit about that.
So this again, the political partnerships are insane, right? And this is why the whole Iranian bomb, whether they get it or not, in the deal and the sanctions, is such a big deal, because you cannot. This is just like World War II, right? What was great about World War II is no one really knows why it happened. Right, World Wars I and II, we don't know why or how they happened. There was no real cause. But what we do know is it was political backing that spawned it. If you probably saw the movie Reservoir Dogs, right, where each guy shot the other guy because of just where the guns were pointed. And so World War II was a German manufacturing machine. And that threatened England, and England was threatened by this, and this one was threatened by this. And then when it just went. Well, here you're looking at the same thing. You have America fighting ISIS. ISIS fights Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia fights Iran. Iran fights Saudi Arabia. ISIS is against Iran. Iran is against ISIS. That makes Saudi Arabia partners with ISIS. If Saudi Arabia and ISIS are partners, who do you think America's partners with? You got it. ISIS. How's that for a mind-blow experience? America is partners with ISIS. So then they say, we're going to give the deal to Iran. So America is somehow partnered with Iran, with ISIS, with Saudi Arabia, and with Israel. And they're backing the rebels against Syria. Now, if that doesn't tell you some shady stuff is going down, I don't know what does. Besides the fact that you have a Muslim in the White House. With that said, Saudi Arabia has spoiled the party of destroying Israel by Islamic agenda, by allowing Israel to have airspace to bomb Iran. Right? So then again, you have Hezbollah saying, wait a minute, we shouldn't be fighting about Islam, we should be destroying Israel. And then you have Saudi Arabia saying, no, Israel, you can fly in my airspace. So it is so twisted and so difficult to gauge the winds as they change at any given moment. That's why it is essential to right now focus the story on Saudi Arabia going into Yemen. But at the same time, you cannot let go of what's going on in Syria. Because one of the Islamic tenets is that the final war will take place in Syria, which it is. So many things happening, and this is why I think it's an amazing. The Torah perspective, I think, is to just call this the exile of Ishmael, Galus Ishmael. Because as far as we're concerned, and where our future involvement is probably destined to become, is just the Middle Eastern entity called Galus Ishmael, as they are so deeply politically this way and that way. It's a fantastic sight to see. And then we bring in Obama, choosing sides like a spoiled third grader. I'm your friend, I'm not your friend. I mean, it's really weird. But there's serious implications of what's going on in the Middle East.
All right, now I want to move on and talk about something very interesting because I'm from Arizona and John McCain is a senator from there, and he recently, I believe, said, or he might have been saying this for a while, but something to the effect that Israel should bomb Iran. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so McCain comes out and he's openly suggesting that Israel bomb Iran. And this just goes deeper into the politics. That Bibi is invited to speak to the Congress, and he's applauded. He's on par with Churchill in visits and speaking success there. Democrats and Republicans are cheering him on. Some are crying that it's a disgrace. A letter was written to Iran that any deal will be nullified by our next president, and you should not assume we are partners with you. We had our election here. Is it going to be a unity government? I mean, i.e., how are we going to view progressing towards interacting with Iran, either in a peaceful or hostile way? All the wars going on. And then, in the middle of it, you have the American brass fully supporting the war of Israel and Iran. And you have to wonder, since we know from Saudi Arabia showing its cards, there's a lot of people out there that want Iran to go down. So is Israel being put on a pedestal and giving clearance to bomb Iran because they're making us do the job no one wants to do? I mean, is that why Bibi is so, able to maintain his poker face and bravery to hit Iran? Because he probably has backing from a lot of nations that want Iran bombed. And then we have to have missiles falling on us in the fallout for having done it. And are we to believe that it's merely for our safety that we hit Iran? Are there other agendas? What really is going on? It's almost impossible to know. But whatever it is, there really is serious things going on. With Saudi Arabia going into Yemen, which it is the war against Iran through proxy. And Saudi Arabia is not kidding around. There's plenty of news to follow of really who's the villain, who's the victim, who's the instigator of the war, what is Obama doing? There's so many questions in the peripheral. And again, just to focus on the point, we can't focus even enough on this point, is that with Saudi Arabia going to Yemen, that really shows the focal point of where this thing is headed.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here at IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. The email is messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio@gmail.com. And our guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. Now, Rabbi Katz, let's talk about the Maral of Prague and some of the thoughts he had regarding Persia.
So in the classic work of Jewish thought, authored by the Maral of Prague, around the year 1500, give or take, he writes that the kingdom of Ishmael is spear-tipped by Pras. Pras is the Hebrew term for Persia. Persia is synonymous with Iran. And he also says something else very interesting. He says that the Mashiach will come by the elevation of the clouds of Ishmael. It's a very strange thing to say. Basically, that Mashiach comes from Ishmael. And it's taken from, I believe, a Midrash and from the Talmud Yerushalmi, that there was, I think it was an Ishmaelite man that was associated with the name of the Messiah. I forget where they brought the source from. And the point is that from this exile of Ishmael that comes at the end, or the heels of exile of Edom, the Mashiach comes out of this. And somehow from Ishmael, we get the Messiah. And this, it looks like this is really how the story works, is that the Ishmaelite wars and the Zohar is filled with semi-prophecies of just with the coming of the Messiah, there is Ishmaelite wars. So they're somehow intertwined, the two stories of Jewish salvation and Islamic demise. For example, the Baal HaTurim commentary to the Torah says that when Ishmael falls, as seen by the death of Ishmael in the Torah, the very next sentence in the Torah says, these are the offspring of Yitzchak, of Isaac. And that is a reference to Mashiach ben David, says the Baal HaTurim. So when Ishmael goes down, the concept is that Mashiach ben David goes up. So, right, so you can see how they kind of cross each other. Right? And so we are witnessing the downfall of Islam in a very strange way. The Zohar also describes it as the 12 princes of Islam are meant to fall down in the end of days, corresponding to the 12 princes of Israel, headed by luminaries such as Elijah, Elisha, over time, and ultimately the Messiah's final repair by his ascension in kavana, or ascension in intention through prayer and service of God, reaching kind of the spiritual altar of God as offering the prayer and repentance of Israel. That's the idea of the clouds going up through Islam. And by Islam coming down, Israel goes up. And we're witnessing that in our world, kind of a non-spiritual world, the lowest world called Asiya, the world of doing, where we're seeing it happen in real time without knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. But what we're seeing is that Iran is your Iranian, Persian, kingdom of Ishmael figurehead. You have Jacob or Israel represented, and you have the West or Esav Edom. So all the biblical characters are there. All the parts of the Jewish thought are there. They're going up, they're going down, the clouds, the Messiah. They even say a red heifer. It was just cleared its second birthday, so there could be a messianic sign there. A lot of things going on. It doesn't require much guesswork, if any at all. All we can do now is follow the story in our news feed. And again, what that story shows is that Iran is the center stage, and Israel is against Iran, and ironically, Saudi Arabia, who also has its share of prophecies of the Saudi Arabian king going to the west, this and that, either alongside Israel or in a duality kind of way against Israel, but at the same time against Iran.
All right. Now, again, this is the Messiah Hour here at IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com. The email is MessiahHour@gmail.com, or the station, you can email them at IsraelSportsandNewsRadio@gmail.com. And our guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book, World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, let's talk about how all different types of Islam, they eventually end at war. So that seems to be where they're headed to, as we could see in the world news. So tell us a bit about it.
So what is Islam? That's the question. And we explained ISIS Islam, the caliphate, securing land in the Middle East, threatening to take over the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia as they see it, spreading Islam throughout the world, preparing to bring down America. And they are functioning, as we said, according to Sharia law, with the caliphate, authentic Islam, as Muhammad would have prescribed it in his wars and in his executions. They say that's Islam. If you don't do that, you're a heretic. Then let's look at Egypt. They have a democratic Islam, right? The Muslim Brotherhood. You'll find them on campuses in Toronto. You'll find them spreading their propaganda, supporting Hamas, and on all of that blend of Islam, right? It's kind of like a political, not so militarily Islam, but they use the military as part of their political branch. Then you have the Shiite Iranian regime, totally different, non-Sunni. They're not even Arabs, the Iranians. Something different. They're Semite. And they spread Shia. It's like an alternative, McDonald's, Burger King is how I see it. It's an alternative that they are the main endorser of their blend, and they have it's not like the Sunni version. Their blend of military and political and war and all these things, they just do it different, and it does not go or jive with ISIS, for example, or the other regimes. Then you can look at when there was a Saddam Hussein and what he was doing. Right? He wanted to rule the Middle East, much like Iran wants to rule, and why they went to war. And he did it, I think, for more of a capital gain. Right? He wanted the oil. He wanted luxury. And what his more theological arguments were, I'm not really sure. But then let's look at Syria. Syria is the idea that the Great War will happen in Syria. So there are those that endorse their kind of buttons of Islam as long as Syria is at war. So that they're really going with the flow. That's Islam. It's, whatever's going on in the world, that must be the true Islam. They're trying to find the true Islam by what God manifests in the world and then identifying it as Islam. So, hey, guess what? There's an Israeli state, boys and girls. Oh, well, that's Islam. Because we're against that. Because we were told by our Imam, Israel is against Islam, and now it's Islamic theology, and the Hadith says, if you see a Jew behind a tree, to kill him. So they're just winging it. There's speakers on YouTube that try to tell you Islam by what goes on in the world. I mean, we're here doing an armchair kind of quarterback analysis of Golos Shmuel, whereas for them, this is their theology. I mean, it's like literally watching J Street argue with AIPAC and trying to darshan out Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah from, the Jewish perspective along those lines. It's ridiculous. And what's even more fascinating is that the Palestinian cause is another yet blend of Islam. Right? And so you arm the locals with Islam, and then the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas use Palestine as a blend of Islam. Right? Save Palestine, unite for Palestine, free Palestine. And then you have the Hezbollah Lebanese blend. Uniting around halfway of liberate Palestine for an Islamic cause, and at the same time fighting in Syria, being a proxy for Iran. And they all really hold of a united Middle East, which is ISIS. That's why they go by the term also ISIL, of the United Islam of the Levant, going around the entire Middle East. So you really have so many types of Islam at one time. They all hate each other. None of them agree. That's why Israel can go to war with Hamas and nobody bombed us because of it. Because they're ideologically opposed. And at that rate, Israel is saved kind of by the natural eye of the storm, by the very nature of Islam. It's an ironic thing. It's predestined for whatever reason. When the Quran was written, one would have to assume that Muhammad knew, but by the terms of interpretation, which there are many due to Arabic language and belief, that they were never going to unite. They were always going to war. And the more fervent they become, the more bloody it becomes. So the more modern they become, which is what America is trying to do to Islam, modernize it. That's how you de-Islamicize Islam. But the more that they reject modernity, then what they do is they become a bloodbath and ideologues that cannot get along. And for that, they absolutely require the Mahdi. That's why there is an end of days and eschatology in Islam. Without the end of days and eschatology and anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish rhetoric, and the anti-West, which is a permission to kill, kind of a license to kill belief, without all of those, Islam would never have launched. So the end of days is a known commodity in Islam, and it's the fact that it's here, it has to be. And that's, again, what Jews are witnessing, called the exile of Ishmael.
Now, another interesting aspect of Islam is the fact that anyone can be a Muslim. And if you, let's say, look at the United States, you have the Native Americans. There's a clear distinction of who was there first, and the Americans came later. And also, Native Americans don't fire missiles and bombs at Americans. So if you can just talk about that aspect of Islam, that anyone can be a Muslim, and it's kind of hard to know if they're pro-us or against us because you don't know who each individual person is.
So for whatever reason, the Semites have conquered land over all the whole world. Do we, was America right for kicking out the Indians? No. Right? The Native American Indians, I really feel for their cause, obviously, as a Jew in the land of Israel. They got shafted. It's a disgrace. Horrible genocide. And in 7th grade, social studies, we learned that they had a nice, happy Thanksgiving. And that's not exactly what happened, is it? So now, I mean, the Native American religion was pagan, is pagan, was pagan, always will be pagan, for better or for worse. For the sake of discussion and argument in this broadcast, the pagan beliefs on American soil has not brought the Native American Indian to rebel against America. They just haven't, for whatever reason, either socially, demographic, religiously, whatever it is. There's a coexistence, even if there is animosity underneath the covers. Like you said, the natives are not throwing missiles at the American government. In Australia, you don't have massive riots of Aboriginals crusading the white man. Now, maybe they would have the right to reclaim their land. That's a different issue. At the end of the day, though, they're not taking that right or that desire to kill the white man. In South Africa, the white man came in. They had apartheid. That fell apart through political turmoil. But even still, you don't have missiles in South Africa. And so all over the world, there was, whether it's a white man or whatever it is, conquering land in a time when that was the practice. And that's the claim against Israel is, hey, buddy boy, that era is over. You cannot conquer the settlements. Right? That's the claim against us. You can't just go in there the way America took over America and all the other lands. Now, that's one issue. It's a major issue of the peace process. But what's interesting is our natives are not like your natives. Israel was commanded to come into the land of Israel and rid of the 7 idolatrous nations. We didn't do that. And the reason why we didn't do that is they're a feisty bunch. That's why the Torah makes this really the number one command. You don't have Israel in the temple until you secure the land of Israel. A lot of people read into this. You have to then throw machetes in their face and nuke them, or AK-47 them down. That's not how it is. The laws of Noah, right? The Torah, the universal Torah message, tradition says, is enough to rid them of their idolatry and bring a peaceful redemption and harmony. It doesn't have to be a bloodbath and a war. But if they resist the God of Israel and persist in idolatry, then the Torah does have its commands to execute, much like ISIS is doing. Only the Torah does it in a merciful way. It doesn't say to broadcast it on YouTube. A bloody Basin was one that killed one in every 70 years, so it wasn't common. We don't endorse killing as a positive thing. But the idea is, if you're going to disgrace God, God wants you exterminated. The task then of Israel is to show God in a great, positive, clear light, so that everybody would want and see that God is great and there's no need to go there. The good news is the Torah is true, and really God really is good. and the Torah is good for mankind. ISIS in the Quran, in their views, are not good for mankind. Right? Raping women in sex trade is not good. I don't know how they can come to that conclusion that it is good. The Torah says women should be liberated, and they should be equal. I mean, personal rights and liberty and freedom and spirituality and healthy soul, that's the Torah. So there's a reason why the God of Israel wins. And at the same time, what makes the problem dangerous is anybody can be Islam. And then the rules of Islam is, as we said, it's easy to identify. Oh, you chopped his head off? Hey, that's Islam. Go for it. And then what you have is our natives have basically adopted Islam, and now our natives are throwing rockets and missiles at us according to Islam. So the Israeli issue is God commanded the Jews enter the land of Israel and rid it of idolatry. America sees that it did the same thing, but it did not do it in a righteous way. Right? The American doctrine is that they went to the promised land and rid of the idolatry. They think that it's the second coming of the Torah, and that's why America and Israel have what they call the unshakable bond. And again, America did it by its own rules and its own legislation, and therefore it was not a righteous act. Israel was told to do it in a righteous way. But what makes Israel so potent in the land is that Islam was created that anybody can be Islamic or Muslim. And the irony is that by doing so, by promoting bloodbath, you are fulfilling and promoting Islam. And that's really what's going on in the Middle East. Is they're recruiting people from all four corners of the world. They're enticing them with blood, and that's what you have. It is a disaster, just like Israel being bombarded with missiles. The world will soon erupt in universal Islam if we don't stop it now, simply because everybody that has a thirst for blood and killing and losing the civil nature of man, that will be placed as a pestilence upon mankind.
All right, last question we have for you. Let's talk about the Mahdi, because Islam believes in the salvation. Of course, Judaism believes in the Mashiach and the salvation that way. Islam has this concept of the Mahdi. So tell us a bit about that.
So as we said, that the nature of Islam is that it cannot get along. That's the nature. That's what it's about. Therefore, the more they realize that they can't get along, then they realize they have to kill each other. Like, you're a heretic. I have to chop your head off. I have to spill blood. I have to make sex trade for women. We have to conquer land. That's going to make you more upset. And so when the world goes into chaos, the Mahdi is coming. Was that a surprise to you? That the world will be in chaos for the Mahdi to come? It's built into the program. Right? If I have a mitzvah to kill somebody, they have a mitzvah to kill me, good chance there's probably going to be a war. That's how the Hanukkah miracle was explained. Jewish wisdom just does not jive with Greek wisdom. And therefore there's going to be a clash when both wisdoms fill the world. And there was. So when Islam gets powerful enough to do something, there will be a clash. It will be worldwide. There will be chaos. And for that they fashioned in the Mahdi, the mythological redeemer of Islam, who comes with Jesus. And what he magically does is unites Islam. Right? He shows ISIS how their beliefs are no different than the beliefs of the Shia. Right? He somehow unites and rallies Islam. Hey, boys and girls, we don't need to fight anymore. We're really all the same thing. Let me explain to you how that is. And they say, well, hey, how do you know that, Mahdi? And they say, well, my good friend Jesus told me, and Jesus is the Redeemer, the real Messiah, and Jesus has rejected Christianity. That is the fake religion. And Jesus came to reprove the Jews and teach us the truth of the Torah, that it was really Islam, and Muhammad was the prophet, and let me tell you, since I'm a Jew and a scholar, how Islam really does work. That's what they believe. When that would happen, the entire world would recognize the people of the book had basically robbed you of your Islamic belief, the world becomes Islam, and their eschatology would play out. So that's how they envision it. And for that reason, they have to fight. Because if they don't fight, there is no Mahdi, there is no Jesus, there is no Messiah. And again, the beauty of it is it's such a cobweb of fiction, and Israel is placed in a hornet's nest with our little state, and that's what's called the exile of Ishmael. Right? We are exiled in their little storm, which you can see it now. That's where we are. We are in their world. Judaism is in that world. You know, American Judaism is predicated on Israeli Judaism. You know, J Street is only a cause of what Israel's doing. AIPAC is only existing for what Israel's doing. Bibi is a puppet from, put up to explain what Israel's doing. American politics and Obama, what is Israel doing? We're in the exile of Ishmael, literally. And that allows us to view these things from the perspective of the exile of Ishmael. So we can understand what the Zohar is saying. We can understand our own personal prophecies. And then we can really understand that the strange midrash that Mashiach comes, they say, the clouds of Ishmael, right? As they call it their messianic end. And they're trying to say that Jesus was the real Jew and all this and that. What is ironic is that our true Mashiach, which has nothing to do with Jesus or a Mahdi or Islam, it really does come about because of the nature of the exile of Ishmael, for which the Zohar says it'll be a time for trouble for Yaakov, and from it he will be saved. That the messianic revelation will come by the demise and falling of Ishmael and the rising of the true Mashiach ben David.
All right, well said. Great job as always. Our guest this afternoon has been Rabbi David Katz of solmazal.com and gergear.com. He's the co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. You can get that book on those websites. This episode of Messiah Hour will go on YouTube as well. So if you go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis, you can see the program there. And, of course, you can email us, messiahhour@gmail.com, or you can email the station, israelsportsnewsradio@gmail.com. Rabbi, thank you for being on today. Great job as always.
Thanks for having me back, Ari. Chag Sameach to you and to your family.
Thank you so much to you as well and to your family as well. And that is today's program. Everyone have a Chag Sameach and enjoy. Be safe out there. This is Messiah Hour on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com.